Hey guys, tonight we step into a room where time doesn't tick, it purrs. A place with avocado shag carpet so thick it practically hugs your ankles, tiki totems lurking in corners like sleepy sentinels, and the humid hush of a jungle that somehow exists inside a Memphis mansion. You're in the jungle room, deep in the private domain of Elvis Presley. The air smells faintly of pineapple-scented candles and old vinyl. There's a green vinyl waterfall burbling softly in the corner, more decorative than functional, and faux animal print everything, from cushions to curtains. It's gaudy, it's glorious, it's Graceland. And tonight, you walk through it barefoot. Now listen, before you imagine yourself stretching out on that plush sofa, or resting your head beneath those carved Polynesian gods, let me give you a quick reality check. You probably wouldn't survive this place for more than 20 minutes. The carpet alone could suffocate a houseplant. The humidity might fog your glasses. And the furniture? It's less inviting and more, let's play furniture rodeo. Elvis didn't design this room for comfort. He designed it to feel like no place else on earth. You're inside Graceland. The year is 1974. Elvis isn't on stage. He isn't in Hollywood. He isn't even upstairs watching television on all three of his bedroom TVs at once. He's downstairs, barefoot, in his sanctuary, what will later be known, reverently and a little cheekily, as the jungle room. You're standing just behind him as he scans the room, sunglasses on despite the hour. You can hear the thick hum of silence, broken only by the occasional rumble of the waterfall. No one expected this room. In fact, most people, including the guy who sold Elvis the furniture, were a little stunned by it. The backstory goes something like this. One day, Elvis went shopping. He strolled into a Memphis furniture store, spotted a collection of carved, tropical-inspired furniture that looked more like it belonged in a 1960s roadside luau restaurant than a southern mansion, and said, "I'll take the whole set." And he meant it, all of it, including the matching bar, the green vinyl accents, the tiki lamps, and the outrageously shaggy carpet. He had it all hauled into the back of Graceland and installed in what had once been a relatively tame den. No one argued, not with Elvis, because this was the kind of decision that only made sense to the king. Here's the thing, though. It wasn't just about being flashy. The jungle room, with all its absurd excess, was deeply personal. To Elvis, it wasn't just a room. It was a mood. Think about it. The world outside was growing more distant. The Beatles had broken up. Disco was coming. Elvis's health was slipping. He'd divorced Priscilla, and his musical relevance, though still strong among fans, was beginning to waver in the industry's eyes. So he built a bubble, a lush, padded, pineapple-scented bubble. And you're in it now. There's a large, lumpy recliner in the corner where Elvis would sprawl with a peanut butter and banana sandwich in one hand and a TV remote in the other, controlling not just the TV in this room, but the whole house. You're noticing the room isn't as big as it looked in the photos. That's part of its charm. It's intimate, like being in a jungle-themed submarine. And when the world got too loud, whether it was screaming fans or gossip columnists, or the gnawing silence of an empty Graceland, this is where he came to disappear. Biographers still argue over the room's purpose. Was it a personal joke, a weird flex, a nostalgic longing for Hawaii? Maybe it was a coping mechanism. Maybe it was grief in disguise. After all, this room bloomed not long after his mother passed away, and not long before his own light began to dim. But tonight, it's alive. You follow Elvis's gaze. He isn't looking at anything in particular. He's humming, quietly, tapping a beat on the armrest. Something's brewing behind those tinted glasses. Later, this room will become legendary. Fans will take photos from the doorway. Musicians will whisper about the jungle room sessions. Elvis's last recordings, made right here, with engineers trying desperately to mic guitars in a room built for echo. But right now, in this moment, it's just Elvis, the green shag underfoot, and a kind of peace that doesn't make sense outside of Graceland. Because the jungle room isn't just where Elvis escaped the world. You walk beside Elvis through the grand front doors of Graceland and feel it instantly. This isn't a house. It's a living shrine to a man who once couldn't walk down a street without causing a stampede. There's sunlight outside, maybe even some morning birdsong floating down from the trees. But inside, time has buckled, and it's all his. The white columns, the iron gates, the plush carpets worn by restless pacing. It's a kingdom built not just on fame, but on the strange need to hold it all still. Elvis doesn't like to leave Graceland anymore. You notice it right away, how he glides more than walks, how the staff speaks softly, as if every word might ripple across a memory. He passes his reflection in a hallway mirror and doesn't stop to look. You wonder if he avoids his own gaze because he doesn't recognize it anymore, or because he knows exactly what it'll say. It's 1975 now. The jungle room is finished. And Elvis? He's shifting into a new phase, one foot in stardom, the other knee-deep in shag carpet. He still performs, of course. The jumpsuits still sparkle. But when the shows end and the crowds vanish, he doesn't hit the town like he used to. He returns to Graceland, the way a sea creature returns to its coral, because everything he needs is already here. This is where you see the king as a homebody. He's in his kitchen at 2 a.m., instructing the cook on how exactly he wants his bacon cooked. Not too crisp, not too limp. Like a record that skips just once, he says with a grin. There's a yellow golf cart parked in the driveway, its tires flat from lack of use. But the Cadillac fleet? All polished, all pristine, all ready to go, just in case he decides to give one away, because that's something Elvis does a lot now. You follow him to the front door one afternoon, where a wide-eyed delivery guy stands holding a package. Elvis doesn't just take the box and close the door. No, he invites him in, asks if he's got time to sit a while. The man stammers, unsure if this is real. Elvis hands him the keys to a Cadillac parked out front. Just like that. And it's not a stunt. It's not for a camera. It's just how he operates in this little world of his, like a benevolent emperor tossing gold coins into the street. Biographers still puzzle over this generosity. Was it guilt? Gratitude? Or did he just like seeing people's faces light up? Either way, it was pure Elvis. In the jungle room, you see a softer side of this kingdom. It's not all glitter and glory. Sometimes he hosts small gatherings there. No press, no managers. Just a few close friends, maybe a cousin or two, maybe one of the bodyguards who's been with him since the early days. They sit on that uncomfortable, ornate furniture, sipping sodas or whiskey or whatever feels right at the time, and they talk. Sometimes it's about music, sometimes it's about God, and sometimes it's about nothing at all. You learn quickly that silence is allowed in the jungle room. That's rare for someone as loud and kinetic as Elvis. But here, he lets it settle, lets the sound of the waterfall do the talking. Lisa Marie sometimes pads into the room in her pajamas, dragging a toy or two, and no one tells her to leave. She curls up beside her dad, unbothered by the adults, as if this green, moody cave was built just for moments like this. You notice how different he is around her. He softens. The way he leans in when she whispers, or how he lets her braid a strand of his still dark hair while pretending not to notice. It's in these quiet corners that the real Elvis breathes, deeply, fully, like someone trying to fill a balloon that keeps deflating, no matter how hard he tries. The staff at Graceland know never to disturb the jungle room unless summoned. It's sacred ground. You don't vacuum it without permission. You don't rearrange the furniture, not even by an inch. And you definitely don't question why the entire space smells faintly of incense and leather polish. Sometimes, when no one's around, Elvis comes here just to be, to sit, to think, to not be Elvis. You wonder how long it's been since he's felt like just a man, instead of a monument. This room, the least serious-looking place in the house, has somehow become the most solemn. And the irony? It wasn't even in the original blueprints. This wild space, this coconut-scented, low-ceilinged oasis, came from a whim, from a king walking into a furniture store and pointing at the most ridiculous set they had. Biographers still debate what Graceland would have become without it. Would he have built a shrine elsewhere? Would he have imploded sooner? But here, in this green cocoon, he bought himself time. Time to reflect. Time to slow down. Time to exist in a world where nobody screamed his name unless they were already family. And so, night after night, he returns. He sinks into that lumpy chair, hits a button to dim the lights, and lets the waterfall whisper him into stillness.
You're in the jungle room, but tonight, something's different.
There's a buzz in the air that doesn't belong to the waterfall or the fridge humming somewhere down the hall. You hear voices, engineers, producers, men in jeans and loosened ties hauling in microphones and coils of cable like they're rigging a jungle expedition. Elvis is recording. You'd think he'd pick a studio in Nashville or maybe fly to LA. But no, tonight the Jungle Room becomes a studio, a real one. RCA has sent a mobile recording unit all the way to Graceland. They're desperate. The label wants new tracks. Elvis isn't in the mood to travel. He's also not in the mood to pretend, so he tells them to bring the studio to him. You follow a technician who's muttering under his breath, trying to figure out how to place microphones in a room designed for conversation and maybe naps, not vocals. "This carpet's eating the sound," someone says. They try blankets, pillows, a few makeshift panels. Nothing quite tames the room. The waterfall keeps sneaking into the background like a ghost soloist. And Elvis? He loves it. Barefoot, wearing a black velour tracksuit, he croons into the mic like he's whispering to the walls. There's no crowd, no spotlight, just him, the band, and the room that feels more like a secret than a studio. The sessions begin late, always after sundown. He works better in the dark. And he's present. That's the thing people remember. These weren't flashy, high-energy sessions. They were low-lit, heavy with mood, like each note had to swim through a fog of memory and pain to reach the tape. They record Moody Blue here, Way Down, even She Thinks I Still Care. And when you listen closely, the Jungle Room doesn't just house the sound, it becomes the sound. There's a kind of humidity in the recordings, a hush that's hard to describe unless you've stood here. Lisa Marie drifts in during a take, her little feet padding across the shag. She doesn't say a word, just climbs onto a cushion beside the console and listens. And the engineers let her stay, because even they know this is something strange and rare. You don't just hear these songs, you feel them. Especially Elvis's voice. It's different now, rougher around the edges, but richer too, like he's singing with a memory perched on his shoulder. One critic later described these takes as sounding like a man trying to summon himself back into his own story. Biographers still argue, was this brilliance or burnout? Were these sessions his swan song, or just one more flicker of magic in a long, unraveling reel? You see both. There's the man who forgets a lyric mid-take, shrugs, and keeps going with a laugh. There's the man who closes his eyes after a song, so still it's like he's praying. At one point, he records Unchained Melody, but not in the Jungle Room. That version comes later, on stage, haunting and raw. Still, its echo lives here, because this room trained him to sing like that. To be unfiltered, to be tired even, but still giving. A young producer whispers to another, he doesn't need a booth, he is the booth, and they all nod. Because somehow, that makes sense here. You glance over at the bar in the corner. No one's touched it, not tonight. The drinks sit forgotten. Elvis wants water and tea, nothing more. You realize, maybe for the first time, that this man, this icon, was never trying to impress anyone in this room. He was trying to say goodbye, not loudly, not theatrically, just honestly. The Jungle Room doesn't pretend. It wraps around you, gently, like vines pulling you back into the soil. And maybe that's why he chose it. Because out there, on the road, in Vegas, on talk shows, everything was performance. But in here the only audience was himself. One night during a break, someone asks if he misses the big studio lights. He smiles, pulls off his sunglasses and says, "Lights don't mean anything if no one's looking at you." It's quiet after that, but the tape keeps rolling, always rolling, because no one dares to say when enough is enough. Tonight, the Jungle Room smells like Polaroid chemicals and freshly brewed coffee. You're perched near a carved wooden armrest shaped like a lion's paw, watching as Elvis tosses his fifth pair of sunglasses onto the table. He's changed his glasses 3 times in 10 minutes. One pair was too dark. One didn't match his tracksuit. One made him look too much like a dentist, whatever that means. Now he's back in aviators, the gold-rimmed kind that catch every glint of lamplight. And right on cue, Lisa Marie runs in. She's got a tambourine in one hand and a popsicle in the other. This is less a studio session now and more a family living room caught between bedtime and backstage. A photographer leans in, trying to capture a moment. Elvis mid-laugh, Lisa spinning in circles, but it's impossible to frame it. The light's too weird. The jungle lamps cast flickering shadows. The shag carpet makes everything look like it's vibrating. So instead, he just clicks and hopes. You get the feeling that's how a lot of people operated around Elvis. Just click and hope. There's a stack of Polaroids on the coffee table now. Some blurry, some beautiful. One shows Elvis reclined like a Roman statue, except he's holding a glass bottle of RC Cola and wearing a leopard print robe. Nobody else could pull that off. Earlier, a buddy from the Memphis Mafia dared to sit on one of the more sacred-looking armchairs. Elvis told him, totally serious, "That one's for jungle spirits only." They laughed, but no one sat in it again. You lean back and just watch. Elvis isn't trying to be anything right now. He's barefoot, his hair slightly damp from a quick shower, one leg tucked under the other like a kid lounging at home. There's something remarkably uncalculated about him in this space. This isn't the man in the gold suit or the leather comeback special. This is the man who worries about his daughter's dentist appointments and whether the delivery guy remembered to include extra mustard. Every so often, he reaches for his acoustic guitar. Not to perform, not to impress, just to feel. He strums absent-mindedly. Old gospel stuff. Snippets of Hank Williams. A few bars of Love Me Tender, but it drifts into something else before you can hum along. And Lisa Marie, ever the sponge, picks up a toy tambourine and tries to match his rhythm. It's offbeat, it's adorable, and it's the kind of moment no press ever saw. Biographers still wonder how many of these homey scenes existed, how often Elvis dropped the mask entirely. Some say the Jungle Room was his only stage without an audience. Others insist even here the performance never stopped. But tonight, he's not performing, he's being. You're drawn to the lamps, those wild pineapple-shaped things with orange light bulbs and shades made of woven grass. They flicker like sunset trying to break through the jungle canopy. And the walls? Covered in green shag, floor to ceiling. It makes the room feel like a diorama, like a secret exhibit at a retro natural history museum. Elvis in his natural habitat. One guy jokes about installing a fog machine. Elvis doesn't say no. They play with the idea for an hour. Smoke, lights, maybe a fake parrot. Then they drop it. Too theatrical, too obvious. He liked the Jungle Room as it was. Gaudy, yes, but still oddly sincere. You look around and realize there are no clocks in this room. Time moves weird here. It's always either too early or too late. Nobody wears a watch. Nobody checks the time. And that's how Elvis liked it. He didn't want to track time anymore. He wanted to escape it. Somewhere between tambourine jingles and guitar strums, a delivery arrives. A paper bag full of barbecue sandwiches and 2 slices of coconut cream pie. Elvis insists everyone eat before they get back to recording. You can't harmonize on an empty stomach, he says. Nobody argues. He tears into the sandwich like he hasn't eaten in days. Someone makes a joke about the king feeding his court. He just laughs, cheeks full, and says, "Long as the court don't rise up, we're good." And just like that, the tambourine jingles again. Lisa's twirling. Elvis is strumming. Someone snapping Polaroids. The waterfall burbles on, indifferent to all of it. And the Jungle Room becomes something else entirely. A playground, a snapshot, a lullaby frozen in green and gold. You run your hand along the arm of a chair that feels like it belongs in a pirate ship, not a living room. It's thick, hand-carved, heavy as gilt, and shaped like it was meant to intimidate small animals. The furniture in the Jungle Room doesn't whisper elegance. It roars campy opulence with a lion's snarl and a wink. And Elvis? He loved every inch of it. The origin story is almost too perfect. One afternoon in the mid-70s, he walks into Donald's Furniture on Elvis Presley Boulevard. Yes, the street already bore his name, and spots an entire showroom display that looks like Don Ho and Bigfoot opened a furniture line together. Massive teak chairs with clawed feet, end tables carved with jungle vines, a sofa upholstered in green vinyl that squeaked every time you moved, loud enough to derail a deep thought. Elvis points and says, I want all of it. The salesman blinks. You mean this set? No, all of it, every piece. And within a day or two, the jungle room was born. You sit now on one of those very sofas. It's not comfortable. The back support is basically non-existent. The seat cushions are firm enough to double as stepping stones. But there's something majestic about it, like you're seated in a tropical throne room designed by someone who's never actually been to the tropics. Biographers still wonder, was this Elvis's attempt at self-parody? Or was it pure sincerity? One more indulgence from a man who had finally stopped trying to impress anyone but himself. You lean against a side table with legs shaped like elephant tusks and notice tiny burn marks near the edge. Cigar, maybe, or incense. It's impossible to say. But you know one thing for sure. Every inch of this furniture has seen things. It's heard secrets. It's felt laughter shake through it, and grief sink into its fibers like rain. You imagine the deliveries that day, workers sweating as they maneuvered sofas the size of rowboats into that back den. The Memphis Mafia shouting instructions, Elvis hovering behind them, barefoot, already redecorating it in his mind. And then, piece by piece, the room transformed. No more traditional Southern touches, no more quiet respectability. The jungle room was something else, a rebellion against normal. At one point, he even considered replacing the ceiling with a glass dome to simulate starlight. He mentioned putting in real plants, but someone gently reminded him the humidity might turn the whole room into a terrarium. He laughed. Even better. It never happened, but you can feel that dream pressing up against the green shag. You pick up a throw pillow, if you can call something that heavy a throw, and notice it's stitched with a floral pattern that doesn't match anything else in the room. That was the point. Nothing here matches. It's a fever dream held together by wood glue, leather polish, and Elvis's unwavering confidence. And yet, it works. Because Elvis believed in it. This wasn't irony. It wasn't a bit. It was a statement. I don't care what's tasteful. I care what feels like me. There's a legend about one of the chairs. Supposedly, Elvis sat in it during a call with his ex-wife, Priscilla. They argued. He hung up, and then sat in silence for over an hour, staring at the waterfall, letting the room breathe for him. Another story says that same chair was where he used to hold court, doling out advice to younger musicians, slipping them $1,000 bills between advice like, "Don't wear cheap cologne, son. People remember your smell." True? Maybe. But in the jungle room, truth and legend are soulmates. You walk past the matching bar now, carved like it belongs in a tiki lounge that serves potions instead of cocktails. No stools. Elvis never liked bar stools, said they made everyone sit like they were waiting for a fight. Instead, he wanted guests to lounge, sink, sprawl. Even if the furniture made that near impossible, that was part of the fun. He once said to a guest, while trying to uncross his legs from a stiff chair, "You think I buy this stuff because it's cozy? No, man, it's character." And that's exactly what this room had. Character that pressed against your back like a wall of humidity. Character that dared you to laugh at it, and then surprised you by revealing how honest it all felt. The jungle room didn't ask for your approval. It simply existed. And so did Elvis, right there, among the lion paws and lava lamp lighting, his sanctuary built of wood, whimsy, and the one luxury he cherished most, not having to explain himself anymore. You push past the carved wooden chairs and squeaky green vinyl, slipping behind the heavy curtains that drape across one end of the jungle room like vines hiding an ancient temple. Back here, it's quieter, cooler, softer. Elvis would sometimes sit alone in this corner, far from the bar and the ever-murmuring waterfall. The velvet drapes muffled the sounds of the house, phones, footsteps, even voices. And in this little pocket of stillness, you begin to understand something most never saw. The jungle room wasn't just for flair, it was also a bunker. And Elvis? Well, sometimes he needed to disappear without leaving. He called it his quiet patch. You find a small end table nestled near the curtain, holding a stack of books. Dog-eared copies of spiritual texts, numerology guides, even a book on UFOs. Elvis had a thing for cosmic mysteries. He'd sit here and talk for hours about life, death, past lives, dreams he'd had the night before. One bodyguard once confessed, he talked like a guy who was trying to remember something he'd never been told. And in this tucked-away velvet nook, he let those thoughts unravel. Lisa Marie was occasionally allowed in. If she was quiet, she'd curl up beside him, knees pulled to her chest, thumb in her mouth, eyes wide as he told her bedtime stories that started off as fairy tales, but usually ended up featuring the Beatles, Jesus, or alien spacecraft. You glance at the lamp on the floor beside the chair. It's shaped like a bamboo shoot, with a shade made of woven grass that's slightly singed on one side. Elvis tried to change the bulb himself once. It didn't go well. Still, he insisted the lamp stay, burn mark and all. It's got history now, he said. That's how he saw things. Worn meant loved. Here in the velvet shadows, he'd host impromptu therapy sessions. Not formal, of course. Just long, late-night conversations with the few people he trusted enough to let see behind the rhinestones. He'd talk about the pressure, the loneliness, the ache in his chest that came and went like an uninvited house guest. He'd talk about his mom. Gladys. Always Gladys. Sometimes he'd speak to her out loud, like she might be listening. And the others, the guards, the cousins, the friends who orbited him like satellites. They never laughed. They just let him talk. Because that's what this room did. It absorbed things. Fear, doubt, regret. Like the shag carpet itself had some spiritual static cling. Biographers often ask why Elvis, with all his money, fame, and power, chose to anchor himself in such a peculiar room. Why not a chapel, a meditation retreat, a proper therapist's office? But that misses the point. Elvis didn't need sleek or solemn. He needed strange. He needed a place where nothing made logical sense, because that's the only place his life did make sense. In the jungle room, the curtains were thick enough to dull the world, the lights dimmed low enough to soften the edges, and the furniture, absurd as it was, formed a fortress. He could drop the stage voice, let his shoulders fall, whisper secrets to no one in particular. He once told a friend, "Sometimes I feel like I'm still that kid from Tupelo, standing on a box just to be heard. Now everybody hears me, but nobody listens." That quote never made it into the magazines, but you feel the truth of it here. One night, he sat behind the curtain for hours, not saying a word, just staring at the velvet folds like they were a curtain in a theater, and he was trying to remember which act he was in. Eventually, he got up, walked over to the piano in the other room, and played a soft gospel tune. No audience, no applause, just notes rising like incense and falling back into the shag. There's a water stain on the wood near where he kept his tea. It's still there, and you can imagine him, fingers curled around a warm mug, steam rising, eyes half closed, saying, "A man ought to have one place in this world where he don't have to pretend." And this was that place. Forget the stage, forget the gold records, forget the impersonators and the Vegas lights and the jumpsuits stitched with lightning bolts. Behind these curtains, Elvis was just a man, searching, grieving, praying in a language only the jungle room understood. It's a little after midnight, and the jungle room is alive. Not with music, not tonight, but with voices, laughter, and the unmistakable crinkle of takeout bags. Elvis has ordered food. Again. You glance at the coffee table, which is now a buffet of southern indulgence. Fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches stacked like bricks, barbecue ribs glistening in the dim lamplight, bowls of chili, and a curious mountain of deviled eggs that someone swears Lisa Marie helped prepare. It's not fancy. It's not catered. It's comfort. And it's all part of the ritual. Elvis sits in the corner, unwrapping a sandwich with a surgeon's precision, while the Memphis Mafia spreads out like cats, some on the sofa, some on the carpet, one guy even balancing his plate on a carved tiki end table. You're sitting cross-legged beside the bar, watching it unfold like a slumber party thrown by a man who never quite got to have a childhood. The food is warm. The jokes are warmer. And the topics? Well, they bounce like a pinball machine. UFO sightings, the power of numerology, whether or not TV newscasters are actually government plants, and yes, Elvis's favorite, conspiracy theories about who really built the pyramids. The man had a thing for mysteries. The bigger and stranger, the better. One minute he's talking about alien abductions. The next, he's breaking down how the vibrations of gospel music align with soul frequencies. He gestures wildly, sandwich in hand, his rings catching the light as he says, "It's all energy, man. That's why gospel works. It vibrates truth." Nobody laughs. They know better. Because even when he's out there, floating between metaphysical dimensions and fried banana theories, Elvis speaks with conviction. And in the jungle room, conviction is currency. You look over at the television, one of the three that's usually on in the house. Tonight, it's off. He's not in a watching mood. He's in a talking mood. Sometimes they joke that he should have had his own late-night talk show. Live from Graceland, one of the guys suggests. Elvis snorts, "Ain't no one ready for that truth, baby." And he's not wrong. Because under all the glitter and Vegas neon, Elvis had thoughts. Big ones. He'd call up friends in the middle of the night to ask if they believed in reincarnation. He once left a voicemail for a fellow musician that just said, "Hey man, do you ever dream in black and white?" That was it. No follow-up, no context, and no one dared to delete it. You shift your seat and realize someone's placed a tape recorder on the floor. Not for an album, just to catch whatever magic might fall out of the air. It's something he did often. Not for posterity, but for curiosity. "Sometimes I listen back," he once said, "just to make sure I was real." Tonight, the jungle room feels like a lounge in some alternate universe, a place where no one wears shoes, fried food is sacred, and the line between philosophy and absurdity is beautifully blurred. Lisa Marie wanders in, half asleep, clinging to a stuffed bear. Elvis scoops her up mid-sentence, barely breaking rhythm in a story about the Knights Templar hiding treasure beneath Arkansas. She curls into his lap and falls asleep before he's finished his theory. That's the other truth about this room. It wasn't just a hideaway. It was a hearth, a place where his inner circle came to be fed, literally and spiritually. And Elvis? He played host with a kind of tenderness that didn't always show on stage. Biographers sometimes debate whether he was paranoid or playful during these late-night talks. Was he truly convinced the government was monitoring him through his TVs? Did he really believe he could communicate telepathically with animals? You've heard him say stranger things. And yet, there was always a spark in his eye, a nudge of humor, a knowing smile that said, "I know this sounds crazy, but what if it's not?" At one point, someone passes around a notepad and starts writing down everyone's spirit colors. Elvis declares his is midnight blue, because that's when I come alive. Nobody argues. Not in the jungle room. Here, midnight blue is a perfectly valid self-diagnosis. The waterfall hums in agreement. And somewhere between the chilly and the cosmic vibrations, the king of rock and roll rests his chin on his daughter's head and whispers, "You don't need the world when the room loves you back." Tonight, you stand in the jungle room, and the question floats up like steam from a mug of mint tea. What was this room really for? Was it a retreat? A temple? A bad joke that went too far? You look around, the carved furniture, the shag carpet, the light perpetually set to sultry cave. On the surface, it looks like someone fed a tiki bar and a hunting lodge into a blender and poured the result onto a Memphis floor. But you've been here long enough to know, it's more than that. Elvis didn't just build this room to be weird, he built it because he needed it. And whether it was meant as a spiritual hideout or just a kitsch-splattered distraction from reality depends entirely on the night you caught him. Some nights it was all laughs, takeout music, banana jokes, Lisa Marie building blanket forts between armchairs. Other nights, it was dead silent. He'd sit there in a robe, hair uncombed, eyes glassy. The waterfall would be the only thing moving. It was like the room had moods of its own. You trace a finger along the edge of a side table. There's a chip in the wood. Elvis once slammed his fist down mid-argument with a business manager, about money, about creative control, about being Elvis. He said, "I'm not a puppet, man, not in this house." That crack in the table, he never fixed it. He said it gave the room character. It's around this time, mid-70s, that people close to him began to worry. Not about the room, about what the room represented. A slow withdrawal, less touring, less daylight, more nights sitting cross-legged on shag carpet, flipping through books on ancient Egypt and Lemuria. You find an old tape recorder in a drawer, one of many. Elvis used to leave messages for himself, not full diaries, just fragments, half thoughts. Remember to tell Lisa the thing about the moon. Try singing Blue Eyes Crying like you mean it this time. I think there's a reason why dreams feel longer than real life. He'd press stop and never rewind. Biographers still debate whether these recordings were acts of creativity or cries for help. But you know what? Maybe it doesn't matter. Because in the jungle room, those two things were the same. This wasn't just his sanctuary. It was also his symptom. You catch the scent of cologne, musky, old school, the kind your grandpa kept in a bottle shaped like a lion. It lingers in the air, hanging just above the vinyl cushions. It mixes with the smell of old paperbacks and carpet cleaner, and somehow it works. Elvis once told a friend, "You know what's funny, man? This room feels more honest than any place I've ever been." And when they asked him why, he said, "Because I built it for me, not for the fans, not for the label, not even for the damn legacy, just me." Some say he never really left the jungle room. Sure, his body would move, upstairs, to the kitchen, out to the car, but something in his spirit stayed rooted here, like a vine curling into the floorboards. A fan once wrote a letter after a tour of Graceland. She said, "The jungle room felt like he might still walk in at any moment." And she's not wrong, because unlike the formal living room or the upstairs bedroom, kept pristine like museum pieces, this room lived. It breathed, it laughed, it broke down in tears and reached for the record player again. You press a button on an old cassette deck and hear a grainy recording, Elvis mumbling through a gospel tune, alone, maybe 3 a.m., the waterfall burbling faintly behind him. He messes up the words halfway through and chuckles. "I'll get it next time," he says. Then silence. Not dramatic, not tragic, just real. That's what the jungle room was. Not an escape from reality, but a version of reality that finally felt manageable. A stage where no one was watching, a performance without pressure, a sanctuary that didn't need permission to be strange or sacred or both at the same time. And isn't that the dream? To have one place, just one, where you can say, "This is me," and let it be messy, magical, misunderstood, and completely yours. Tonight, the jungle room sounds different. It isn't just the waterfall trickling or Elvis's voice mumbling gospel into a tape recorder. It's laughter. Full-bodied, unfiltered, possibly barbecue-fueled laughter. You peek in to find a circle of people doubled over on mismatched cushions, trying to catch their breath. One of the guys has just delivered a spot-on impression of Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, trying to use chopsticks at a Japanese restaurant. Even Elvis is wheezing. He's laughing so hard he drops his RC Cola. Doesn't even care. Because this is his favorite show in town. Improvised, unbroadcast, and 100% off the cuff. The jungle room is many things, but tonight, it's pure comedy club. And it's not just one-liners and impressions. Sometimes, it's games. The Memphis Mafia loved coming up with ridiculous challenges, like trying to eat an entire banana without using their hands, or racing each other around the jungle room on wheeled office chairs while Elvis calls the play-by-play in a fake British accent. It's absurd. It's immature. It's perfect. Because behind the pressure of legacy, behind the headlines and the impersonators and the gilded weight of being the king, Elvis was a goofball. You see that clearly tonight. He's wiping tears from his eyes, saying, "Y'all are gonna kill me one of these days," before doubling over again when someone plays a prank call recording from earlier in the week. Apparently, they'd called a local diner pretending to be Colonel Sanders, requesting emergency fried chicken airlift. It worked. and Elvis nearly choked on a biscuit laughing when he heard it. There's a certain rule in the jungle room. Nothing is too stupid to try once. One time, Elvis bet a friend he couldn't balance a grape on each knuckle. Another time, he staged an impromptu fake game show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in Velvet Pants, complete with buzzers made out of empty soda cans and a cardboard crown. Lisa Marie wandered in halfway through and became the final contestant. She answered every question with Barbie, and Elvis declared her the winner by default. Prize? Ice cream at 2 a.m. Of course. Biographers don't often mention this side of Elvis. Maybe because it doesn't fit the tragic icon narrative. Maybe because it feels too light to carry weight in a biography. But it mattered. This room, this carved, padded playground, wasn't just a jungle of nostalgia. It was a stage for joy. And joy, for Elvis, was often a performance in itself. He needed these laughs like medicine. They cut through the heaviness, reset the mood, helped him forget, even for a few minutes, the expectations waiting just outside the room's shag-covered borders. There's a dent in the arm of one chair where someone once tripped during a mock sword fight using tiki torches. You touch it now, still there, still holding the moment. Every scratch, every stain, every squeaky spring in the sofa tells a story. You sit back, let your legs stretch out onto the plush rug, and feel how it cradles you, not softly, but deliberately, like it's trying to say, yes, this is real. In a house filled with tour guides and flashbulbs, this room kept its secrets, and laughter was one of them. Elvis's kind of laughter, deep, unguarded, echoing through a room that shouldn't have been acoustic enough for echoes. Tonight, it sounds like home. Even the waterfall seems to chuckle. Someone starts a new round of a guessing game called, Is it a sandwich or a poem? And Elvis, holding a peanut butter and pickle concoction, shouts, It's both, baby. You laugh too, because how can you not? This is joy, shag-carpeted and strange. And for a man whose life was lived under a spotlight, this hidden little theater in the heart of Graceland may have been the only place where joy didn't require applause. You step into the jungle room and half expect a ukulele to start playing on its own. The walls pulse with that unmistakable 1970s tiki energy, equal parts Polynesian fever dream and basement lounge gone rogue. Tonight, the lamps are all on. The pineapple-shaped one by the bar, the carved torch lamp with the flickering orange glow, the little one by the record shelf that Elvis swore was haunted but in a good way. This is a theme, make no mistake. Elvis wasn't just assembling furniture. He was building a vibe, and that vibe, 100% vintage tiki. You might not peg the king of rock and roll as a tiki enthusiast, but the clues were there all along. His love for Hawaiian shirts, his deep spiritual affection for the islands, his lifelong craving for anything tropical and escapist. He filmed 3 movies in Hawaii. His Aloha from Hawaii concert was broadcast via satellite to over 1 billion people, long before live streams were even a twinkle in the internet's eye. But here's the twist. The jungle room wasn't really Hawaiian. It was something more peculiar. It was Midwestern tiki. It was continental kitsch. It was the kind of decor you'd find at a steakhouse in Des Moines that also served Mai Tais. Bamboo bar stools, rattan panels, overstuffed chairs that looked like they belonged in Tarzan's waiting room. He bought it all at once. Sightseen, soul-hooked. Elvis didn't dabble. He committed. He didn't buy a piece or two and call it island-inspired. He bought the whole forest. Biographers still scratch their heads. Why this? Why now? Why not something sleek and tasteful like the other stars of his time? Because that wasn't Elvis. He didn't decorate to impress critics. He decorated for escape. In the 1970s, tiki culture was everywhere. It had morphed from a post-World War II fascination with the South Pacific into a full-blown design phenomenon. Suburbs were filling up with tiki bars, bamboo blinds, and carved idols. It was a fantasy you could build in your backyard, or, in Elvis's case, your mansion. You walk past the faux leather bar, sticky in places, and imagine him standing there with a coconut-shaped mug, pouring soda for a house guest while recounting the time he saw a UFO, which he did claim, by the way, more than once. This was the age of escapism. Disco in the streets, Watergate in the papers, and shag carpet on every available surface. And for a man slowly stepping back from the world, the jungle room was his last great transformation. Not a cape, not a costume, a place, a world unto itself. Tonight, it almost hums with energy. There's music coming from the turntable. Martin Denny, the godfather of exotica. It plays softly, crackling under the needle, while someone lights incense that smells like cinnamon and burnt sugar. Elvis used to sit right here, tapping a finger on the armrest, swaying just slightly. He liked the odd rhythms, liked the fact that you couldn't quite sing along. One of his friends once joked, "This room feels like it's always on island time." Elvis smiled. "Good. World's too fast anyway." You wander over to the record shelf. It's stacked with everything: gospel, country, old doo-wop singles, and several tiki-themed compilation albums with covers that look like postcards from dreams. Elvis liked collecting the weird stuff. The more obscure, the better. He'd play a track, pause it halfway through and say, "Now imagine that, but underwater." Then he'd laugh at his own mystery. The jungle room was never meant to make sense. It wasn't trying to be timeless. It was trying to be elsewhere. And for Elvis, who had already been everywhere and seen everything, this fantasy jungle was maybe the last place left to go. No plane tickets, no screaming crowds, just a room where the rules were his and his alone, where leopard print and lava lamps could coexist in peace, where the only schedule was whatever time you woke up, and where the king of rock and roll could sit cross-legged in a bamboo chair and ask, without irony, "Do you think parrots dream?" Someone probably said yes, because in here, everything dreamed, even the furniture. It's a still night in 1977, and the jungle room is dimmer than usual. The lamps are on, sure, but softer, lower, like they've caught the mood. The record player sits quiet, the needle resting in its cradle. The incense isn't lit. The waterfall trickles as always, but even that seems hushed, like it knows what's coming. Elvis is in his chair. You see him clearly now. He's heavier, slower. There's a magazine on his lap, unread. A styrofoam cup in his hand, gone lukewarm. His hair is still jet black, still immaculate, but behind the aviator shades, his eyes look far away, like he's searching the room for something he might have left behind decades ago. This isn't a performance. This is the final act. Over the past months, the jungle room has changed. It's no longer the party zone, or comedy club, or cosmic confessional. It's a stage, a studio, a last resort. Earlier that year, Elvis brought in the band again. RCA rolled in their mobile unit, engineers plugging cords into wall outlets meant for lava lamps and jukeboxes. The jungle room became his last recording booth. They laid down a handful of songs, soft ballads, swampy blues. The mood was heavier, the laughter came less often, but the voice? Still there. Worn, yes, strained, but full of truth. And in some strange way, the room had evolved with him. The carpet still swallowed footsteps. The tiki chairs still creaked. But the jungle room no longer felt like a fantasy. It felt like a refuge, a padded space where he could lay his soul down on tape without having to explain anything. You imagine the final take, the engineers holding their breath, trying to isolate the vocals from the low hiss of air conditioners and ambient jungle room weirdness. They weren't in a studio, they were in his studio, his temple. And those songs? You can still hear the walls holding them. Not polished, not perfect, but human. He recorded way down here, just weeks before his death. There's a stretch near the end of the track where his voice drops lower than most tenors would even attempt. Richer than bourbon, heavier than grief. Biographers still argue whether he knew it would be his last. Some say yes, that he felt it in his bones. Others insist he was planning another tour, that he'd circled new shows in red ink on the calendar in the kitchen. But if you ask the jungle room, if you listen to this room, it'll tell you. He knew. Not with fear, not with regret, with acceptance. You walk to the corner where the bar sits untouched. The fridge hums. Inside, a few sodas, some wrapped sandwiches, and a bottle of cough syrup. Everything's still where he left it. You move toward the console where blank cassette tapes once waited for gospel demos. There's a note taped to the side. Don't touch, King's Mix. It's dated 2 weeks before his death. He never finished it. Upstairs, the rest of Graceland is quiet. Down here, the jungle room feels like it's bracing itself. The waterfall still trickles. The velvet curtains still move gently with the AC. But the heart of the room, its soul, is dimming. You sit in his chair, just for a moment. It's firmer than you expect. There's a slight tilt to the left. The arms are worn smooth. He sat here often, staring at nothing, or maybe everything. Sometimes with Lisa Marie on his lap, sometimes with a guitar, sometimes with nothing at all. And it's in this quiet, worn, kitschy jungle that the king of rock and roll gave us his last notes. Not with fireworks, not with fanfare, but in a carved wooden room that smelled faintly of cologne and longing. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how he wanted it. You tiptoe into the jungle room, and this time, it's different. It's not alive anymore. The lights are off. The carpet lies still. The air smells faintly of lemon polish, like someone's been trying to tidy up a place that never really wanted to be clean. Elvis is gone, and the room knows it. It's August 1977. Graceland is quiet, except for the crowd gathering at the gates. The city doesn't sleep that night. Radio stations cancel their programming to play Elvis songs. But in here, inside the jungle room, it's as if someone pressed pause. You step carefully past the sofa, still dented from years of lounging, still carrying the invisible imprint of the man who used to sit cross-legged in a velour tracksuit, humming gospel tunes between bites of pie. The record player is silent. The waterfall is unplugged. The tapes are gone, boxed up and moved out. What's left are shadows and memory. Lisa Marie doesn't come in here for a long time. No one really does. The room becomes a kind of shrine, sealed by silence, a time capsule padded with shag carpet and grief. Visitors to Graceland are not allowed to walk through it. Not really. They stop at the rope, lean in, take their photos, and whisper. You can almost hear their thoughts. This is where it happened. Or more accurately, this is where he ended. But they're wrong. This isn't where he ended. This is where he retreated, where he dropped the crown and just let himself be. Graceland itself has transformed. It opens to the public in 1982, 5 years after his death, and instantly becomes one of the most visited private homes in America. People come to see the kitchen, the TV room, the gold records. But the jungle room? That's the pulse. It draws the most stares, the most questions, the most speculation. You glance at the floor by the bar and see a stuffed teddy bear left by a fan, small, handmade, with a note that says, "Hope you found peace in your jungle, E." It's not the only one. They come by the hundreds, candles, flowers, cards. Some even slip little drawings or guitar picks through the gate, hoping the house still listens. Biographers still debate the jungle room's legacy. Was it a creative cave or a padded prison? A self-built temple or a warning sign no one heeded? Was it the world's weirdest recording studio, or just the only place he ever felt safe enough to sing? You don't need an answer, because standing here, in the quiet after everything, you feel it. The room still holds a presence. Not haunted exactly, not ghostly, just aware, like it's waiting. Not for him to come back. He's not coming back, but for someone to remember it right, to understand that this wasn't just a room. It was a refuge. It was a final friend. There's a sunbeam creeping through the curtain now, landing on the tiki bar in a way that makes the dust sparkle. You watch it for a moment. Time slows again. You realize no matter how many decades pass, the jungle room will always feel paused. Mid-laugh, mid-note, mid-dream. You wonder what Elvis would say if he walked in now. Maybe he'd smirk. Maybe he'd shake his head at all the fanfare. Or maybe he'd sit down, pick up a guitar, and hum something low and familiar, something that didn't need an audience. And the jungle room, still and faithful, would hum back. You're sitting cross-legged on the carpet now, surrounded by whispers and wonder, and the truth is, no one really knows what happened in this room. So the myths moved in, and the jungle room became legend. Was there a secret tunnel hidden beneath the shag carpet? Did Elvis keep a pet monkey in here? Was one of the chairs haunted? Did he once fire a pistol at a lava lamp? Depending on who you ask, the answer is yes to all of the above. Let's unpack a few. First, the tunnel. Longtime fans swear there's a secret passage beneath the jungle room that led to a private exit, a kind of emergency Elvis escape hatch. The truth? No such thing has ever been found, but the myth persists. Why? Because people want to believe there was some way out of the spotlight, even if it was under the carpet. Next, the monkey. There's an old story that Elvis once brought a spider monkey into the jungle room and dressed it in a rhinestone vest. The punchline? The monkey allegedly slapped one of the Memphis Mafia and ran off with a peanut butter sandwich. There's no photo, no confirmation. But if any room in America could make that story feel plausible, it's this one. Then there's the story about the chair, the cursed chair, as one former staffer jokingly called it. According to the tale, anyone who sat in that particular seat while insulting Elvis behind his back would suddenly get a rash. A rash. Look, could it have just been cheap upholstery glue reacting with aftershave? Sure. But again, jungle room. Logic doesn't hang its hat here. And finally, the infamous gun story. One of the most widely spread legends claims that Elvis, frustrated by a malfunctioning television one night, stormed into the jungle room, pulled out a revolver, and shot the TV. Now, this part is mostly true, except it didn't happen in the jungle room. It happened in the upstairs TV room, but that tiny detail hasn't stopped fans from pointing at the green shag carpet and whispering, "Right there, that's where he blew it apart." The jungle room has become a kind of story magnet. Anything strange, secretive, or too wild to believe? People stick it to these walls like thumbtacked Polaroids. Biographers try to set the record straight, but the myths keep outpacing the facts. And maybe that's okay, because the truth, Elvis in retreat, grief humming through the green shag, tired hands on gospel chords, is too quiet for some people. They want spectacle. They want tiki ghosts and peanut butter monkey brawls. They want Elvis to be more than human, even when this room's entire purpose was to make him less. You shift in your seat and notice a framed photograph on the shelf. Elvis mid-laugh, Lisa Marie tangled in his lap, surrounded by open bags of chips and soda bottles. It's the most unremarkable moment, and maybe the most important, because if you strip away the monkey suits and the rumors of voodoo tiki rituals, yes, that one floated around for a while too, what's left is this: a man trying to hold on, to family, to quiet, to anything that felt real. You flip through a guest book kept just outside the jungle room. Hundreds of names, thousands of scribbled notes. One reads, "I hope whatever was haunting you in here finally let you go." Another, "It looks so weird in the photos, but standing here, I get it." And that's the point. The jungle room isn't meant to make sense from the outside. It's meant to feel like something once you're in it. A womb, a dream, a sacred joke, a place where even the wildest rumors somehow feel more like folklore than lies. Because this room doesn't correct the record, it absorbs the legend. You're standing in the jungle room again, but this time you're not alone. Behind you are footsteps, thousands of them. Fans, filmmakers, poets, Instagrammers, TikTokers, Elvis impersonators who've come to study the carvings on the chair backs like they're ancient runes. Because the jungle room didn't just stay sealed in the 70s, it lived on. Not in the way Elvis probably imagined, not private, not sacred, but in fragments and echoes scattered across pop culture like rhinestones from a torn jumpsuit. After Graceland opened to the public, the jungle room quickly became the unofficial main event. Tour guides could sense the shift. Guests would politely nod at the gold records and the pristine piano. but then they'd get here. And suddenly everyone slowed down. Phones came out, eyes went wide. Because this wasn't just decoration, it was a vibe. Like stepping inside someone's mind, mid-thought. The green shag, the leopard print, the wall-to-wall chaos, it didn't match anything. And somehow that's what made it irresistible. Soon, artists began referencing it. Musicians called their home studios jungle room style if they had lava lamps and a humidifier. A band named Moody Blue released an entire EP recorded in a tiki bar just to honor the space. A documentary filmmaker used it as the title and theme for a series on creative burnout, calling the jungle room a shrine to the impossible task of relaxing when the world still wants more from you. And on Etsy, you can buy jungle room-inspired candles, shag carpet samples, even tiki mugs that say TCB, Elvis's personal motto, taken care of business. On eBay, someone once auctioned off a single scrap of green carpet, supposedly pulled from the corner of the real room during minor repairs. It sold for $743. Biographers shook their heads. Fans lit incense in tribute, and the legend got just a little weirder. In the 2000s, Lisa Marie Presley did a few interviews where she talked about the room with a kind of resigned affection. She said, "It was strange, but it was his, and when he was in there, it was like the world couldn't get to him." That line stuck. You've seen it quoted on fan message boards, on tribute sites, even embroidered on throw pillows. It was like the world couldn't get to him. That's what the jungle room became. A symbol of escape, not the kind that costs money or travel, but the kind you build yourself when nothing else feels safe. In the decades since Elvis's death, designers and stylists have called the room a masterpiece of bad taste, a psychedelic cave, an unmatched monument to emotional insulation, and the greatest single-room autobiography ever built. And somehow all those things are true. You step back and look again. It hasn't changed, not much. The waterfall's still there, the curtains still thick, the tiki bar still ready, though no one's poured a drink in decades, and the furniture still refusing to be subtle, still carved like someone lost a bet to a jungle god and turned their rage into woodworking. Yet in the world of mass-produced interiors and curated aesthetics, the jungle room remains stubbornly itself. You can't replicate it. You can only surrender to it. The strange thing is, no one really comes here to laugh at it anymore. They come to feel it, to sit in the stillness, to imagine Elvis, barefoot, robe flung over one armrest, strumming something soft while the waterfall mumbled in the background. And more people admit it. They wish they had a jungle room. Not for the furniture, not for the fame, but for the permission it gives to make space for your weirdness, your softness, your quiet need to just not be seen for a while. In a world that rewards the spotlight, Elvis built a jungle, and somehow, all these years later, we're still trying to find our way through the vines.